Welcome children. Take out your geography book. Chapter 5 Natural and Man-made Disaster. Television and newspaper often report events across the world that have caused loss of life and resources. Now television and newspaper, what they often give? They give some report which across the world that they have caused loss to life and proper life and resources. We do not call such an event a natural calamity any longer. Now, to do such an event, we do not call it as natural calamity any longer. We call it a disaster. And what we call it? We call it a disaster. When do we call such an event a disaster? Now, when do we call such an event a disaster? When a natural or human included event leads to a huge loss of life, property and livelihood, thereby affecting a whole community and country's economy. Now, when natural, either it is natural or human, it event leads to loss of life, property and livelihood, and this affect the whole community and even the country's economy. It is said to be a disaster. Now, it is said to be a disaster. External aid is needed to cope with the losses caused by such extreme event and to take immediate positive action. Now, external help is needed to cope up with these losses which are caused due to the extreme events and to take some positive actions. Disaster may strike anywhere at any time. Many times they cannot be averted, but preparedness and awareness can reduce their impact. Now, disaster, it can cause any time, anywhere, any place, but many times what kind of disaster cannot be averted, but preparedness and awareness, it can even reduce the impact of disaster. Earthquake tremors are almost a daily occurrence in Japan and California, but preparedness measures prevent disaster in many instances. Now, earthquake tremors, it is mostly seen as daily occurrence in Japan and California, but preparedness measures prevent the disaster in many instances. Now, causes of disaster. What are the causes of disaster? There are several factors that can lead to disaster. Now, many factors are there which leads to disaster. First is the socio-economic backwardness. Now, socio-economic backwardness, what does it include? It includes lack of awareness, illiteracy, poverty. Now, examples. Among the coastal dwellers of the Bengal Delta and Orissa, poverty and lack of awareness leads to repeated loss of land, life and property during cyclones. Now, the people who lives in the coastal areas of Bengal Delta and Orissa, due to their poverty and due to the lack of awareness, this leads to repeated loss in life, land and property during the cyclones. Lack of proper planning and inadequate training to cope with a disaster. Now, they do not know how to plan, means they due to lack of proper planning and inadequate training, how to cope with a disaster. Absence of routine study in a disaster prone area. Now, where there is disaster, it is needed to be they follow the present routine. Now, absence of routine study in disaster prone area. Now, absence of plant development in area. Now, even there is some absence of plant development area. Absence of well-trained disaster management, means in this part there is no daily routine study during disaster prone area. There is no well-developed, well-planned development is shown. There is no well-trained disaster management team, lack of infrastructure to manage the disaster event. There is no infrastructure facility so that it could manage the disaster. Example, the Kedarnath floods in June 2013 is a case in point. Kedarnath flood which occurred in 2013, it is a point. The main reason behind the disaster was incessant rains together while melting snow from the ruptured Korabari Glacier Lake in the higher reaches of the mountain. Now, main reason behind this disaster was that there was heavy rains together with the melting of snow from the ruptured Korabari Glacier's Lake in the higher reaches area, in the higher part of the mountain. However, it caused massive devastation due to overcrowded settlements in the Mandakini. Though this disaster caused massive devastation due to overcrowded settlements in the Mandakini Valley, and lack of planning to overcome such a situation, and there were no good planning to overcome this situation. Disaster happened not in uninhabited places but in dense and unplanned population area. Now disaster, it not happens only in uninhabited places but also in dense and unplanned populated region. Population explosion results in indiscriminate exploitation of forest and illegal construction of. Now population explosion, what it results to? It results to indiscriminate exploitation of forest and even illegal construction of building, indiscriminate felling of, that is too much of cutting of trees, insufficient drainage system. Now there is no good drainage system in illegal construction. If the construction is carried on in an illegal process. Example, the floods in Mumbai in 2005 is case in point. For example, floods in Mumbai which occurred in 2005. There was mainly due to heavy rains coupled with an effective drainage system, illegal building construction, poor planning and maintenance of old buildings and depletion of mangrove from the shoreline. Now, why it occurred? This flood in Mumbai in 2005? Because it was due to heavy rains without any effective drainage system, illegal building construction, poor planning and maintenance of old buildings and depletion of mangrove from the shoreline. It would not have been such a death as it occurred 100 years ago. Now, it would not have been such type of devastation as it occurred in the about 100 years ago, when the population was 10 times smaller than than today. Now during that time population, it was 10 times smaller than today. Now overutilization and resources. Now overmining and illegal mining come. Second comes the overuse of surface and groundwater. Third comes overexploitation of forest. Now fourth comes overexploitation of land. The excessive use of surface and groundwater leads to drought condition. Now if we use excessive amount of surface and groundwater, then it will lead to drought condition. Large areas of Bundelkhand, that is Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh and Vidarbha, that is Maharashtra, they are facing the drought and even scarcity of water. Climate change due to global. Now climate change, why it occurs? Due to global change. Rise of sea level and loss of land due to submerge of lands and coastal area. Now when there is rise of sea level and there is loss of land due to when the land gets submerged and coastal area. Melting of glaciers inducing floods in river. When glaciers melts and induces floods in the river. Change in rainfall patterns causing droughts and floods. Now when there is change in the rainfall pattern which causes droughts and floods. Example, tropical cyclones have become more frequent in the Sundarbans than ever before. Now tropical cyclones, what it has become? It has become too much frequent and in Sundarban area than before. As a result, coastal flooding has become an annual event, and so coastal flooding, what it has become? It has become an annual event. At the same time, sea level rise is also responsible for the submergence of many coastal areas of the world, such as some of the deltaic island in the Sundarban and some island of the South Pacific. As a result, there is a rise of, at the same time, what happens? When there is a rise in sea level, it is responsible for the submergence of coastal areas. Coastal areas get submerged, such deltaic island in the Sundarbans and some island in the South Pacific. This results in terrible loss of habitat and resources coastal dweller. Now this results in terrible loss of life and even the people living in the coastal area. Types of disaster. Disaster may be classified into two types based on their nature of origin. Now disaster is a two type when it is based on the nature of origin. Natural disaster due to climatic and geological factor. Natural disaster, why it occur? One is due to climatic or the geological factor. Then second, human induced disaster. Another is human induced disaster. Due to nuclear wars, epidemics and accidents it occurs. Among these, some may be slow onset while others may be sudden. Now among these, what happens? Some are very slow onset and the others are sudden. Disaster caused due to forces of nature. Now disaster which is caused due to forces of nature. Flood. Floods are mainly caused due to heavy rainfall, swelling of river, water, dam, collapse, cyclone, tsunami, glacial melting and storm surge in the coast. Now floods. Why it is caused? Due to heavy rainfall, swelling of river, water, dam collapse, cyclone, tsunami, glacial melting, storm surge in the coastal area. Impact. Flood can cause loss of life and property in the place. Now flood, it can even cause loss of life and property in the place. They can drill agricultural output and can cause huge loss of food grains and livestock. Now what they can do, they can drain the agricultural output and even cause huge loss of food grains and livestock. They usually lead to landslides in mountainous area. Usually what it leads to? It leads to landslide in the mountainous area. People are rendered homeless. People what they become? They become homeless. Floods lead to contamination of drinking water that causes break of waterborne diseases. Now, flood. What it leads to? It leads to contamination of drinking water and causes break to waterborne diseases such as malaria, diarrhea, jaundice and leptospirosis. Now, it causes many waterborne diseases, that is malaria, diarrhea, jaundice and leptospirosis. In coastal areas, agricultural land turns saline due to tidal flooding and is hence rendered unproductive. Coastal areas, what happens? Agricultural land, it turns into saline water, and so the tidal due to the tidal flooding and hence the land becomes unproductive. Now, risks of reduction measures. Risks or reduction measures, that is, now first comes mapping of flood prone areas is essential to prepare for precautionary measurement. First, it is necessary to means point out the flood prone areas, which is essential. Mapping of flood prone area. It is very essential to prepare the to take the precautionary measures. That is the first measures. Evacuation of livestock and people should be done from vulnerable areas. Now, evacuation of livestock and people, it should be also done from vulnerable areas. Buildings in coastal areas should be built in cells or in pedestal. Now, buildings in coastal area, it should also be built in the cells or on the pedestal area. Warning should be given through the mass media such as television and now warning also should be given through this mass media, that is television and area. Walls of houses must be flood proof. Now, walls of houses, it should also be flood proof. And efficient disaster management team should be organized in the locally. Now, it is very necessary to organize an efficient management team in the local organization. Disaster management kit must always be kept ready, and always disaster management kit should be kept ready. Now, cyclones. Tropical cyclones are caused by the development of sudden low pressure over the sea, leading to a strong winds with thunder and lightning. Now, why cyclones occur? Why are cyclones caused? Tropical cyclones, they are caused to the development of slow low pressure waves over the sea level during a strong wind, which leads to strong winds, thunder and lightning, which are accompanied by heavy showers, that is heavy downpour. Impact. Lightweight shelters are blown away. Coastal areas are flooded. Now, during cyclone, what happens? Lightweight shelters, they get blown away because storm carries them away. Now, coastal areas, they get flooded, embankments get broke, and often there is contamination of water, and water gets contaminated. Now, high-speed winds damage crops, fishing, villages and other infrastructure. Now, high-speed wind, what it does? It damages the crops, it damages the fishing villages and even the other infrastructure. Some entire islands are submerged. Some entire island, they get submerged. Now, risk reduction method. Settlements must be built on higher ground away from the vulnerable coastal area. Now, it is very necessary that settlement, it should be done on higher ground which is away from the coastal area. Cyclone shelter must be built where the people who are excavated can be sheltered before the onset of cyclone. Now, cyclone shelter, it is very necessary to build the cyclone shelter where people can take shelter. People can take shelter with the coming of cyclone. Row of trees called shelter belts must be raised parallel to the coast to obstruct and reduce the speed of the wind and surging sweater. Now row of trees, which is called the shelter belt. It must be raised along the parallel of coast to obstruct and even reduce the speed of the wind and the surging seawater. Cyclone forecast. A early warning should be broadcast on radio and air. Now cyclone forecast and even the early warning. What should be? It should be broadcast on the radio and even on the television. The warnings are specially beneficial for fishermen in coastal area. Now this warning, it is very much good for, it is very much benefited for the fishermen living in coastal area, so that they can refrain from venturing into the turbulent sea. Now take out your geography book, take out your diary, write chapter 5, natural and man-made disaster. 3 pages explain, homework, revise it. And with this, I am ending my today's class. Goodbye.